Hello and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot enthusiast, and professional witch, and today I'm talking about Dionysus. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. If you love the show, the best way to support it for free is by listening daily, leaving a review, and subscribing or following in your favorite podcast app. If you love the podcast and want to support it further, join the Everyday Tarot Patreon family. Benefits include getting an individual card pulled for you once a month live on the podcast, or if you'd like to support the podcast even further, you can get a one-time individual 5-card reading in addition to all the other benefits if you join the Witch Bitch level on the Patreon. I recently recorded an hour-long video episode for the new moon in Libra that we welcomed in on September 22nd, 2025. If you missed the live, you can check out the new moon in Libra collective tarot reading replay now to get all the latest info. I'll be speaking at the Queer Joy Summit 2025 hosted by Colette Dalton this October. So the summit is a week, October 13th through the 19th, so coming up soon, completely free and online, and it's all about centering queer joy as survival, resistance, and connection. I'll be giving a presentation on queering the tarot alongside an incredible lineup of queer artists, healers, rebels, and dreamers. Together we'll laugh, maybe cry, and remind each other that joy is not optional, it's ours right here, right now. So the event is free to attend and the sign up will be in the show notes. I would love for you to join me in the rest of this beautiful queer community. And I'm also going to be doing on the 13th at 3 p.m. Pacific time, I'll be doing what am I talking about? I'll be doing a witchy hangout. I think we're calling it Mystic Hangout as part of the Queer Joy Summit. An additional thing where you can come live, and I'll be doing a collective reading. And then another one of our Queer Joy Summit presenters, Emily, will be doing individual readings. So if that sounds really fun and you want to join us at the Mystic Hangout, that will also be free as a part of the whole summit. That just will be a live event. And I believe we're going to record it partially, perhaps not all for the individual readings if people aren't interested in that, but definitely for the collective tarot reading part. So yeah, you'll get that as well if you join the Queer Joy Summit and sign up for that. All right, excuse me. I was recently on Kayla Moore's Connected Pleasure podcast. You can check out my episode of Kayla's podcast. I'll have it linked in the show notes, where we talked all about living by the body, dreaming of land, and weaving the future. You'll actually hear about it in the episode, but Kayla and I were actually introduced by a colleague and met when I attended one of her sacred singing circles that they held. As someone who grew up singing in choir, it was incredible to get to be in that space with her and her colleague and connect by singing in such an empowering, connected, and ritualistic way in her space in Gig Harbor on a beautiful, sunny summer day. Kayla is actually in the middle of a launch for their one-on-one coaching container right now. I'll be upfront in stating I am an affiliate for them, and I think they're amazing and do incredible work in the realm of the divine feminine. So Kayla's books are open for their launch period, October 6th through the 12th. So right this week as this podcast is going live. So Kayla's one-on-one coaching program is an 8-week private journey for women who feel disconnected from their sexual desire and are ready to reclaim it on their own terms. Together with Kayla, you will unravel the knots of shame, pressure, and conditioning that have silenced desire and begin reweaving connection to the body, erotic energy, and pleasure. It will be an intimate, personalized work where people learn practices to awaken the desire, create safety in their bodies, and integrate pleasure into daily life. By the end of the journey, they'll feel more connected to themselves, more confident in their erotic voice, and free to experience desire as a natural, sacred part of who they are. So I'll have a link to Kayla's offer page in the show notes as well, and I definitely recommend you checking them out. Kayla is another witchy person, and also a certified sex therapist. So that was sort of how we got connected. If you want to work with me more directly and maybe you don't live local to me, I'm offering Tarot for Transformation, which will be a live course. I'm actually pivoting. I was going to do a 12-week sort of intensive starting at the end of this summer, but I'm actually pivoting and starting to explore the idea of actually doing this once per month next year, starting in 2026. So if you are interested in getting more info, I'll be fleshing that out a bit more, working on my curriculum, but we're going to be deep diving the first 12 of the major arcana cards with me as we embody archetypes and learn about how to transform ourselves through the tarot. This will be learning about self-development and intuition, and utilizing the archetypes of the tarot cards to understand how we approach life, what things we might want to be welcoming in our life, what things we want to be might be wanting to let go, and utilizing the archetypes as a way to explore these ideas. So the full details are at the link in the show notes, but like I said, I will be pivoting into this new way to do this. Instead of doing 12 weeks, we'll actually be doing, getting to really deep dive. I'll be creating workbooks, and we'll have calls that you can attend live or recorded. And I'll have more info about pricing and such coming shortly. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be talking about that a lot more as the rest of the year goes on, as we prepare for this kind of like big launch that I want to do in 2026. So if you don't already know, I am a sex and relationship therapist and coach, seeing individual and relational clients virtually all over from my home office. I love working with queer, poly, and witchy clients. So if you'd like to work with someone that doesn't judge you, is witchy just like you, and helps you learn how to deal with anxiety, chronic pain or illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex, and you want to do that work in this more personal container, right? You can head to my website and book a free consultation now to start your journey and working one-on-one with me. If you are interested in crafting your own tarot cards, you can go ahead and get my full workshop, which includes an hour-long recording with my step-by-step method, and I love to do collage as the way to craft my own tarot cards. It'll have examples of cards I've created, so lots of pictures of the ones I've made and kind of the style that I personally choose. It'll have journaling questions to help you figure out, how do you want to create your cards? Are you picking images and then figuring out what card matches the image, or are you intentionally going to create a certain card and looking for specific images or symbols that might really incorporate with that card? And I'll also have a whole I believe like 15-page PDF to walk you all through the process for just $33. And like I said, you'll get the recording too, where I talk about this whole methodology. So yes, you don't have to draw if you don't feel like you're an artist or creative. To me, collage is a very accessible way, right? Getting magazines, old books, materials that you might already have around the house as a way to craft your own tarot cards. All right, so yeah, if you want to learn more about that, and perhaps purchase that whole bundle, the link will be in the show notes to purchase that now. If you're interested in getting my free PDF with the 2025 5-card tarot spread I created just for you, my lovely listeners, at the beginning of this year, you can get that by joining my newsletter list. My weekly newsletter always has the most up-to-date information on upcoming events, presentations, musings, and info and photos of my day-to-day life. So if you want to see pictures of my garden and chickens, hear a bit more about what I'm personally up to, and then having kind of a one-stop shop to find all of my links for upcoming events, presentations, things I'm participating in, that is a great way to do so. If you're local and want to meet me in person, I run a Let's Talk Tarot meetup group, so you can come chat with other tarot enthusiasts. It's a pretty casual event. Bring your decks and we'll play with tarot and oracle decks together. Usually we talk a lot about our own practices, our own witchy or magical practices, how long or our experience with tarot, answer questions with each other, and then often do readings and kind of give readings back and forth together, which is very fun. And you always get to see a lot of other decks, which I really love. Getting to like see and hold other decks in person to see if you connect with them. And if you're interested in celebrating the full moon with me in person, I'm holding full moon women's circles for the rest of 2025. So we just did one on October 5th with my colleague Izzy and I under the glow of the full moon, where we have an evening of connection, reflection, and ritual. We often incorporate movement practices. Izzy does an astrological kind of like update on what this moon is all about, how to work with it, things you should or shouldn't do, perhaps with each particular moon, the energies around it. I do kind of a collective tarot reading or tarot pull. We often pull cards together, do journaling and reflection and sharing, and then we usually do a sort of like ritual burning of things at the end, of things we perhaps want to release or manifest. So it looks different every full moon, but all the links for that are already up. So like I said, we just had one October 5th for this recent full moon, but the next ones are November 2nd and December 7th. And the registration links for that are already up. We meet at Thresholds Collective in Tacoma the first Sunday of the month to welcome in the full moon together. So if that is interesting to you and you're local, you know, we would love to see you there and get to celebrate the full moon together. You can find the links for any of these offers in the show notes or on my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot, in addition to the images of the cards I pull on each episode. And apologies, I am in a different location than usual, and so we may have city sounds in the background today instead of birdsong like it normally is at my house. Okay, so welcome to season 16. Oh my gosh, we're here. I'm talking about queer deities. So if you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you can check those out. The recent one I did before this that I just wrapped up is tarot and crystals. So if you are into crystals or gemstones and incorporating that, that's a great season to check out to learn about that. And yeah, like I said, we are now in season 16 of the podcast, talking all about queer deities. So today I'm talking about Dionysus. And I will go a bit into the mythology of Dionysus. We're going to talk about the queerness, and then we'll get into tarot card affiliations with Dionysus. So I'm going to be reading a bit from the Women's Encyclopedia of Myth and Secrets by Barbara G. Walker. This is quite the tome of a book, hundreds of pages long, I believe. Yeah, over 1,000. So it's a great sort of, again, encyclopedia. So I'll be reading about kind of the mythology of Dionysus there. And then I have two other resources. So on llewellyn.com, a blog about Dionysus, and then also pride.com, there was a whole section about queer gods. So I'm going to be utilizing those resources today as well to dive into Dionysus. So let's get into the mythology of Dionysus. And like I said, this will be mostly pulled from Barbara Walker's book, The Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. So, Dionysus, with many other savior gods, Dionysus was also called Bacchus, Zagreus, Zeus, Adonias, Antheus, Zalmoxis, Pentheus, Pan, Pater, or the Liberator. So his totem was a panther, or known as Pantherios, so the beast of Pan, and his emblem was the thyrus, a phallic scepter tipped with a pine cone. His priestesses were the Maenads, or Bacchantes, who celebrated his orgies with drunkenness, nakedness, and sacramental feasting. So Dionysus is often presented as a rustic wine god, inventor of viniculture. He was more than that, though. He was a prototype of Christ, with a cult center at Jerusalem, as well as nearly every other major city in the Middle East. Plutarch said the Jewish Feast of the Tabernacles was celebrated in his honor. The quote is, "I think that the festival of the Sabbath is not wholly without relation to the festival of Dionysus." He added that the Jews abstained from pork because their god Dionysus Adonis, Lord Dionysus, was slain by a boar. In the 1st century BC, the Jews themselves claimed to worship Dionysus under his Phrygian name of Zeus Sabazius. Tacitus said that Dionysus Liber was the god of Jerusalem in the former time, but a different god had replaced him, a god with less attractive characteristics. The quote here says, Liber established a festival and cheerful worship, while the Jewish religion is tasteless and mean. How nice. Dionysus and Jehovah were literally two sides of the same coin in the 5th century BC, when coins found near Gaza showed Dionysus on one side, and on the other a bearded figure labeled JHWH, or Jehovah. In Lebanon, Dionysus was incarnated as Amplios, a beautiful youth torn to pieces by a bull, and reincarnated as a grapevine. In Chios, the blood of men murdered by Dionysus' Maenads were used to fertilize the vines. At Orchomenus, the triple goddess appeared in Dionysian rites as the three princesses who tore apart a male child and ate him. This was supposed to symbolize the earth absorbing sacrificial blood. In Thebes, a king named Pentheus dared to oppose the Dionysian cult, perhaps because he didn't care to die like the other Dionysian god kings, but the women tore him to pieces anyway, led by the king's own mother, or mother goddess, who wrenched his head off. Later, Theban rites of Dionysus centered on killing and eating a fawn named Pentheus, and the Maenads wore fawn skins. The god's Lydian totem was a fox, Basarius, forerunner of the medieval Reynard. There, the Maenads called themselves Basarids and wore fox skins. These darker legends show that Dionysus' typical savior pattern, first and the most primitive, a king killed and cannibalized to provide both the earth and women's wombs with fructifying blood, then a surrogate for the king and a condemned criminal or a young man chosen by lot, then an animal substitute for the man, and finally flesh and blood devoured in the form of bread and wine, the classical Dionysian sacrament at Elias. In Palestine, Dionysus was identified with Noah, the first biblical patriarch to get drunk, as seen in Genesis 9:21. His Greek title was Duakleon, new wine sailor, the flawed hero in pre-Hellenic myths. So Dionysus was also a form of Adam, offspring of Father Heaven and Mother Earth, Zeus and Demeter, torn to pieces to make a sin offering of the wine, quote-unquote, of his blood. His later hero incarnation, Orpheus, star of the popular Orphic mysteries, was the same sacrificial god, torn to pieces by the Maenads. Proclus said Orpheus, because he was the principal in the Dionysian rites, is said to have suffered the same fate as a god. Orpheus was a third-generation savior, identified with his divine father Dionysus, as Dionysus was identified with his divine father Zeus. Seated on the heavenly father's throne, brandishing his lightning scepter, Dionysus was hailed as King of Kings and God of Gods. He was also the god-begotten, virgin-born, anointed one, Christos, whose mother seems to have been all three forms of the triple goddess, the Earth Mother, Persephone, or we have the Earth Mother, we have Persephone, the underworld queen, and then we have Semele, the moon maiden. Hints of a hanging or crucifixion ceremony appeared in his sacrificial title Dendrites, young man of the tree. He was also a horned god, with such forms as bull, goat, and stag. According to the classic story of his dismemberment, the god took such animal forms in rapid succession to avoid the onslaught of the Titans. So they were the pre-Hellenic earth deities, who eventually caught him and tore him to pieces and devoured him. They trapped his soul in a mirror while he was admiring his reflection, which equates Dionysus with the spring flower guard Narcissus, another of his many disguises. According to Pausanias, it was Onomakritos who made the Titans into authors of Dionysus' sufferings. But the Orgia had not included this detail of old. Probably one of the god's oldest forms was Dionysus Melanigus, Dionysus of the black goat skin, a scapegoat, a satyr like Marsyas. His traditional costume contributed much to the medieval Christian notion of the devil's habit of appearing in the form of a black goat. Very interesting. At Eleusis, the place of his advent, Dionysus appeared as a newborn holy child laid in a winnowing basket, Lycaon, from which he was called Dionysus Lycnites. The sacred object, his cradle, was carried in his processions by a special functionary called a lycnophoros, or a cradle bearer. The lycaon was the original form of manger in which the infant Jesus was laid. All grain gods, whose flesh was eaten in the form of bread, appeared as newborn babes in a vessel intended for seed corn. A long-remembered incarnation of the god was King Dionysius of Syracuse, who altered the custom of king sacrifice in the 4th century BC. When the time of his immolation approached, King Dionysius substituted for himself a courtier who was called Damocles, meaning either conquering glory or glory of blood. Damocles was said to have volunteered to take the king's place because he envied the privileges of kingship. He enjoyed these privileges for a short while, but soon discovered a sword suspended above his head by a single hair, symbol of the fate of the kings in a time when they and the gods they embodied were perfectly fated to die. So, right, lots attributed to Dionysus, and also a very old god, again, like other savior gods, also known as Bacchus or Pan, which is very interesting. So yeah, so that is from the Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. When we think more about the sort of like queerness attributed to Dionysus, So we have Dionysus, known as the Greek god of wine, also the god of intersex and transgender people. So male lovers, right? And the mythology I just read, right? They really focus on the sort of like female groupies that would sort of like follow him around, the maenads, and I would say like keeps a much more like heterosexual idea of Dionysus, although there is still the part of like the birthing of a new world. But we have like male lovers of the god included the satyr Amplios and the famously handsome Adonais. He also once made a journey to Hades, so in the underworld, and was guided by the shepherd Prosmenus, who led the way in exchange for the chance to make love to the party god. When Prosmenus died, before that deal would be consummated, the god created a wood phallus to ritually fulfill the promise. And this is according to like research by a number of historians, including Hyginus and Arnobius. And that's pulled from pride.com, talking about queer gods. And then on Llewellyn.com blog about Dionysus and sort of like androgyny, a scene with Dionysus. But yeah, Dionysus is considered like a very most often consistently seen as queer. So Dionysus, again, a Mediterranean deity, because not just a Greek god specifically, but he was worshipped like far beyond the boundaries of Greece and far beyond like that time period as well, right? Sort of have these different iterations. Dionysus had temples and devotees throughout the ancient Mediterranean world, and the legends, practices, and liturgy surrounding him come from many people of, different places, and many were drawn to him in the ancient world. So yeah, why do we associate Dionysus with queerness? So first, because he's a deity that's referred to like in the masculine, most of the time. There are exceptions, but also right through this was known for numerous relationships with other people who were masculine, again like the satyr Amplios and Prosmenus the shepherd. He was known for and associated with male love and was recognized and honored as a part of his nature. We also see Dionysus depicted as kind of like gender fluid. One of the epithets is androgynous, or man-woman. And we still use the term, right, androgynous today to describe people who straddle the gender binary when it comes to appearance, presentation, and personality. So in the story of Prosmenus, he takes the receptive role in sex, which in the ancient world was seen as like an effeminate act. There's also sort of like cross-dressing and gender play are things mentioned in his relationship to the wild rites and sort of the party aspect of Dionysus. And they're even like in the famous play about him, the Bacchae, that Euripides made. There is also the Orphic hymn to Mies, who's accounted as a female Dionysus. So, right, we have Dionysus seen as male, then also often androgynous, and also sometimes female. There's also referred to as two-bodied in another Orphic hymn. So, right, that could also sort of be referencing this androgyny. So Dionysus is also liminal, right? He's a deity who appears in many places and times. Like we said, he's associated with the cycle of death and rebirth, with sort of this like being reborn. He's both chthonic, which means like of the earth, but then also celestial, because he is also from the heavens. He was born of a mortal woman and a deity. And in fact, his like second birth was talked about as being, he was sewn into Zeus's thigh, is also sort of like gender subversive, right? Like being born from Zeus, a masculine figure. Also, we have Dionysus again descending into the underworld to uplift both his mortal mother, Semele, and the demigoddess wife, Adrian, into his full divinity. So he is a deity who defies both the boundaries of all sorts. Liminality is a core quality of queerness. I love that they go into here, like, how do you connect with Dionysus as a queer deity? Dressing as fabulously and flamboyantly as you can while going to an entirely mundane location. Love that. Today, I am going to the Taylor Swift movie with friends, and I will definitely be dressing up. And while the movie theaters are not entirely mundane, it might feel that way in a bit. They say, try to incorporate something that is leopard or snake print, because leopards and snakes were sacred to Dionysus, and or something that is purple, a sacred color for him to represent wine and grapes. Wow. They say also, if there's a Denny's restaurant near you, that could be the perfect place to try out, because Denny is short for Dennis, which is derived from Dionysus. I had no idea. You could always dedicate queer sex acts to him, including solo activities. Wow. And they talk about that Dionysus creates like the first dildo out of a fig tree growing over Prismius's grave so that he can have sex with him even though he has died, right? As I shared in the mythology. Right. You can always volunteer some of your time, energy, or money in his name to organizations and events that support queer folks. So yeah, all of this is really incorporated in Dionysus, and Dionysus is sort of like at the forefront in a lot of ways of this sort of like spirituality that's incorporated with queer folks and experiences, both in this like aspect of humanity and divinity or spirituality. And you know, if all else fails, party it up, because Dionysus is also known as the party god. Which I think is very appropriate. So yeah, I feel like this ties into, well, talking about the Queer Joy Summit as well, which, like I said, I'll be having a presentation at, and then we'll also be doing like a live hangout on the 13th, the Mystic Hangout, where we're gonna pull some tarot cards and such, and really kind of casually talk about how to, in a lot of ways, incorporate queer joy as a form of resistance in this day and age, which I feel like Dionysus would be all about. And so a lot of that can come, sure, in like scholarly things, talking about the mythology, right? But also like in the fun, in the joy, in being creative, in being yourself and dressing up fabulously. Even for mundane things. So, all right, let's get into sort of tarot affiliation with Dionysus. All right, so yeah, cards I would think being associated or affiliated with Dionysus. I mean, I think of the Fool, sort of interestingly, because they talk about Reynard and kind of like the fox representation. Actually, I have a deck where, trying to remember which one it is. I think it's the Anima Mundi tarot deck by Megan Weyerwenden that depicts the Fool as a fox, kind of standing up on its back legs, so kind of looking a bit humanoid, and being this very like, right, clever, sly thing, but also like being on the brink of a new journey, right? Like Dionysus encouraging it to to like take a leap of faith, and also creative expression, like right, like there are these themes with Dionysus of creative expression and finding joy, even when things are kind of very challenging or it's hard to find, or there's a lot of like obvious joy. I also think of the card like Temperance, because there's sort of this like personal alchemy and unification of opposites that we associate with Dionysus. So we have like this dual nature, right, of like, it says, like wine, Dionysus can inspire both ecstasy and madness. So there is this sort of like complex and contradictory nature, which goes along with Temperance's theme of balancing like opposing forces. And then we also have the liminality, right, of Dionysus existing in spaces between kind of like divinity and humanity, perhaps like sane and insane. And also just, yeah, how that is mirrored in the Temperance card imagery of mixing and kind of combining. That's often depicted on that card. I think you could certainly also attribute like the Tower card to Dionysus, because there is this sort of like destruction of the ego, right, about, and also radical transformation. And Dionysus goes through a lot of different transformations, because it's also this like painful sometimes but necessary process of shedding who you think you are to become your true and authentic self. And also that journey can be very overwhelming and can feel like this uncontrolled descent into chaos, right? Like there's an aspect of the Tower card that like requires surrender, or even if you don't kind of like, I was gonna say like Jesus take the wheel mentality, but that there is this level of like, okay, well, this is happening. How do I deal with it while it's happening? Like it can be very overwhelming and feel like this is never going to end. But right, the Tower really signifies that like we are destroying things in order to create something new. And often that we can't create something new without sort of like the phoenix turning to ash, that you need the literal ash of something in order to enrich the soil, to plant or create something new. I would think other cards would be perhaps like the Three of Cups, because they're sort of like celebration, friendship, community aspect, right? Like parallel to Dionysian like festivals and like revelry, the party vibes. Perhaps like the Four of Wands, which is like about celebration and home and community gatherings again, which like aligns with like the joyous side of Dionysus. And I think too like the Sun, because there's that joy and creative expression, which is like another facet of Dionysus's like domain. And just that also, like when I think about the Sun, I know the Sun is supposed to be like the best card in the tarot deck, but like sometimes the Sun can be really intense, right? Sometimes it literally burns us. And I think like there is that level of Dionysus, right? That like there is this sometimes like pain and or suffering that comes along with the joy. And that also that we have this kind of like, not opposites, but that we can like hold the complexity or the nuance of that we don't get to just have one, that there is this complexity. And I think that is also what Dionysus is all about, that like Dionysus is complex. I would say like the best mythology is, because it's not just one thing. There also this sort of like depth to it, that isn't always, I don't know, Dionysus gets talked about as very like, again, like sort of belittled because of the party aspect of like the revelry of the joy, and like liberation and ecstasy of Dionysus. But there's also this like transformative aspect, that can kind of get like pushed to the side, when Dionysus gets talked about. All right, so let's go ahead and pull a card to see what message Dionysus has for us. I do not have all my tarot decks with me, so I feel like I'm going to pull from the Norse Goddess Oracle, because I feel like it is a powerful deck. And that feels right for Dionysus. There's definitely like a power with Dionysus. It's very funny. I've been watching the Magicians TV show, originally on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I've been watching it, and I just watched an episode where the Bacchus is in. So Bacchus is also equivalent to Dionysus, just talking about the different, who named Dionysus, you know, what cultural or mythology that we're talking about. But yeah, even in that episode, Bacchus as Dionysus is seen as like, I'm trying to think, I don't want to like spoil things, but yeah, that there is this sort of like darker, more complex side to Bacchus as Dionysus, because it's not just all about the party. That's what it looks like on the surface, but that there is this sort of like reason to party or reason to celebrate things, that it can't, like, that it doesn't, that is part of resistance. We have to find the joy in things as well. All right, so I pulled number 13, Gebo, or Idun, all about gift, exchange, and love. Sounds like Dionysus to me. Okay. So it says, I am Idun, goddess of youth. My golden apples hide the signs of aged truth. A gift I bestow to prevent elderly change. May Gebo bring blessings for an equal exchange. So Idun is all about the goddess of eternal youthfulness, keeper of the charmed golden apples that keep the goddesses and gods from ever aging, and also sharing altruistically with grace and care. Let's see here. So yeah, as we get into the sort of the divination meaning of the rune. So Gebo is the rune of exchange, meaning gift. It is the gift of energy, time, attention, and love, as well as tangible objects. This rune represents gifts given and received. Perhaps a gift is coming your way, or you will receive immense pleasure in gifting something to others. The rune itself looks like an X, the kiss at the end of a letter where one's blessings are bestowed upon another. Gebo brings your attention to the importance of gifts, of learning the love language of your partner in order to give what they long for. Gebo reminds us that giving can be altruistic. However, it should not be at the detriment of your own well-being. If you can offer time and services to charity, donate goods or money to worthy organizations, this can go a long way to balancing your energy away from the self. It also calls to mind the energy exchange between your head and heart. Are you truly aligned with your purpose? How can you love yourself more to truly bring balance back, right? We also have the duality part here. As Gebo is balanced and equal, it allows you to focus on what gifts you have, what you can offer, and to explore those situations where perhaps you are giving more than you receive. Love should be given and received in equal measure. Gifts should be repaid in kind, and as we see in Havamal, be your friend's true friend. Return gift for gift. Repay laughter with laughter again, but betrayal with treachery. What you ignore, you accept. Be mindful that the energy you exchange with others is for weal, not woe. Balance yourself, love yourself, give freely of yourself, and receive freely in kind. Well, I feel like that's such a perfect message for Dionysus, right? That like part of the resistance and sort of the party aspect is that like Dionysus is often like throwing the party, right? Like being the god of wine, right? Like transmuting this thing of creation, like turning grapes, fruit, fermenting them, and turning them into this thing that is great for partying, right? This substance that changes people to some extent, right? Its own transformative process, whether, as it talks about, whether that's for good or sometimes not so great. There is this sort of, yeah, like just a lot of depth to Dionysus that I appreciate getting into today. So, all right. Well, if you'd like to join me and watch my presentation for the Queer Joy Summit, that's October 13th through the 19th. You can sign up now, and the link will be in the show notes. I would love to see you there and come to our Mystic Hangout if you're available live, or watch it later if you're not, to get the collective tarot reading that I'll be doing to check out some of Emily's beautiful individual readings that they're going to be doing for folks. Links for the tarot decks I talk about will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And I would love for you to join me on the journey of using the tarot for transformation. Like I said, this will be kind of like launching starting in January 2026, and I will be fleshing out more information about that coming soon. But if you are already like, I want to know more, click on the link in the show notes and I'll get you on my list to start getting more info about it. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. And thanks for being patient with me last week. I know the episodes weren't super consistently coming out, or like I posted one at 9 p.m. one day Pacific time, so apologies. But yeah, I appreciate your continued listening, and I'm doing my best to get those episodes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of you. So you can email me, me@CamilleASaunders.com, with your thoughts, questions, more. What are your thoughts on Dionysus? Did you learn a bit today? Do you love Dionysus? Do you have anything you want to share with me about other information you know about Dionysus? Again, a god that's been worshipped for many, I would say, like centuries. And so there's a lot out there about them. But anyway, yeah, feel free to email me. I'd love to hear from you, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.